Good morning, friends. Welcome to my Monday edition of When World Views Collide. Just a Christian's perspective on some things he sees in the culture. And just at random, I have been thinking about a lot of things, but right now my thing is Ayn Rand, and we're about 2 months away from the movie based on her magnus opus book, novel, Atlas Shrugged. And I've been thinking about Ayn Rand because a lot of food for thought for Christians regarding the philosophy of objectivism and Ayn Rand's take on the world and her philosophy, which is loaded with a lot of good and bad stuff. But I found this article I'd like to read. It's about Ayn Rand on Marilyn Monroe. She wrote it after Marilyn Monroe died in 1962. And let me just read it briefly. In 1962, shortly after the death of Marilyn Monroe, novelist Ayn Rand wrote about the shock felt by so many people at the time in the universal disbelief, this sense of, oh no. She praised Marilyn as an actress who preserved a radiantly benevolent sense of life despite a wretched childhood and nightmare struggle for success, but who found, upon reaching the top, that she was now a target for the malice and envy of those who resented her wondrous capacity for innocence and joy. Rand wrote that Marilyn's unique achievement was her projection on the screen of a pure, innocent, childlike joy in living, untouched by suffering, unable to conceive of ugliness or evil. But when she received the pinnacle of success, she encountered something she had never expected and could not believe. Hatred. Hatred of a special kind. Hatred of the good for being the good. She had a unique ability to portray the glowingly innocent sexuality of a being from some other planet, uncorrupted by guilt. Yet she found herself denounced as a vulgar symbol of obscenity, ridiculed, insulted, degraded by those who would destroy her achievement. Marilyn was unable to conceive that it was precisely her greatness that had made her the object of such ridicule, but she knew in some sense that she was up against an unspeakable evil. She offered her audience the sunlit universe of her own vision, only to be rewarded with the vilest form of envy, hatred of ability, of beauty, of honesty, of achievement, and above all, of human joy. Those who could never hope to equal her achievement wanted the satisfaction of preventing her from enjoying her own. Such hatred, says Ayn Rand, is the style and fashion of our century. Marilyn was helpless to combat the torment exacted upon her radiant soul by such a malevolent cultural atmosphere, and it ultimately destroyed her. If ever there was a victim of society, wrote Ayn Rand, Marilyn Monroe was that victim of a society that professes dedication to the relief of the suffering, but kills the joyous. Wow, where do I begin? I'm using the Marilyn Monroe piece in a broader context. I'm not going to discuss Marilyn Monroe per se, but this idea of society and our culture, and even from a Christian perspective, about our desire, preoccupation perhaps, of dealing with those in life who are the suffering, who are the underdog, those who look at life and are really entertained, are inspired, whatever you want to use as a phrase, with the Horatio Alger story, the rags to riches idea of somebody coming up, working extra hard to achieve success. And this is great. I mean, I understand that entirely. Everyone likes the story of David beating Goliath. And I don't expect to change that. I don't expect the fact that a lot of Christians in particular want to be compassionate to those who are down and out. We can identify with people who've made tremendous mistakes, who are struggling, and we want to give them a hand. And I'm not here to dismiss that point of view. Ayn Rand might, I don't know specifically, but she makes some observations that I think are very, very interesting, and I think neglected in our society. A lot of times, people who are great or celebrities and such, there's certainly a fascination with them. I mean, you can't say that people who do well have no fan base. I mean, they'll be on the cover of magazines. They'll have people who want their autographs and this and that nature. Celebrities, professional athletes, musicians. But at the same time, I think that they're thought of more as commodities than actual people. And these particular commodities that we like, we have tremendously high standards for them. And it seems to me that we're looking for opportunities to bring them down without looking at the fact that they're flesh and blood people. And just because they're successful does not mean they don't have the same problems, the same frailties of humanness that others have. And Marilyn Monroe was probably a good case of that. We just thought, well, why is Marilyn Monroe depressed? She's got everything. She's got the world by the tail, so to speak. And, we just, don't really feel a great deal of sympathy for her. We might feel tragedy for her, perhaps. But we'll look at the things she's done that were of her own doing and blame it on her. The same can be said of anybody who reached the pinnacle of success and then for whatever reason they fall off that, whether it be drugs or divorce or anything. We're going to treat them, I think, a lot differently than those people who are just like regular Joes who fall off the scrap heap of life. And I guess what I really want to get at is this idea of society having a certain envy or jealousy to those who are great, and basically not wanting to really nurture greatness, and not really want to look at greatness as something that as a trophy of God and certain gifts He's given to certain men who can do wonderful things. Yet we're more preoccupied, particularly, like, say, for instance, in the public school system, of having programs for those people who are special needs or slow learners, and we'll put all our resources, hopefully, to get these slow kids up to a level where they can succeed. This may be all well and good, but we don't allocate resources to the kids who are particularly gifted or smart kids, and ultimately. And I think astutely, as the writers of the Bell Curve pointed out, a controversial bestseller a few years back, that those people who are gifted are ultimately going to be the ones running the world. And if we don't do whatever we can to give them not only the tools, but maybe the ethical standards to do this in a way that's honorable, we do this at our own peril. And I think Ayn Rand knew the importance of really elevating or lifting up greatness and achievement in our society, which we don't. We may marvel at it and might watch videos of it on SportsCenter or whatever, but do we really really prefer the people who come from nothing and show an ability to play at a high level? And when we see that, we actually rate them higher than they are, because they're kind of like the barroom brawler who gets in the ring with Muhammad Ali and is able to win in kind of an ugly type of fight, but he's gritty and determined. He's able to win, much like Jimmy Young did against Ali. It wasn't a great fight, but we commended Young for getting in with the champ, or Rocky and getting in with Apollo Creed and doing these things. And that's all fine, but greatness is something that we should marvel at, because people who are great are something that is unique. Only certain people can be great. And I find it interesting that rather just sit back and watch greatness and marvel at it, we always have an excuse to say, well, that's not the norm. Let me give you an example. I remember one particular high school football game that my son had a real good game at. He had like about 200 yards of total offense. And one of the parents he commented that, well, that's all well and good, but you can't count on winning games like that every day. It's almost like he preferred the week before when my son wasn't playing, and they won this really it was this low scoring contest that the team had to grind their way out to win, and it's because the better player wasn't in. Everybody had to band together and win, and he almost said that was a better way to win than have one shining star have a great game. He dismissed the game as abnormal, or he almost didn't want to see one kid excel in the game. I guess he just thought it was to the detriment to the other players. The one kid had much more speed and much more physical skills to play sports than the other kids. And a lot of people just don't like that in our society. And if the great players become flamboyant or try to display their skills in a way to entertain the crowd, a lot of people think that's showmanship, and they don't like it. And I'm curious about that, because we sometimes identify arrogance in a way that I wonder if it's really true from a societal point of view, and I wonder if it's really biblical. If you think God has given you something great, ability to be great, and you want to, some way showcase that, is that arrogant if, for instance, you're in the weight room, you're practicing, you're working hard to better your craft each and every day? Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, these guys were all great in many ways, particularly, Magic and Michael, for instance. They love to put on a show for the fans, yet they work particularly hard every day. So my point I'm really wanting to get at is this idea of this idea that Christians should honor the ordinary as a way to prove that we know God's extraordinary. So we don't want to really lift up superhuman efforts. We prefer to really focus on ordinary men who do their work hard, and God lifts them up. Well, God lifts everybody up, but I also want to call attention to the fact that half of the New Testament was written by Saul of Tarsus, later the Apostle Paul, who was an extraordinary human being, a gifted human being. So God's perhaps greatest vessel to proclaim the gospel, particularly to the Gentiles, was by a man who was no ordinary man. He was a great man. And I'm sure there are, examples in the Bible of eloquent men of God, men who had unique gifts, who God used prominently to advance his kingdom. I'm not saying the ordinary guy is not important. We should always be looking for people who are, success stories, who come from rags to riches, maybe have to work hard and aren't exceptional, to look at, but they're great. But do we do this at the expense of the great ones? And are we actually entertained when the Tiger Woodses of the world actually fall? It seems to me that if Tiger Woods was not who he was, if he was not so great at what he does, if he did not have a demeanor that indicated greatness, perhaps arrogance, which I think is a common theme among great players or great athletes or great anything, it's just because they have tremendous confidence. When they fall, we almost like to see it. It's almost like, we told you so. You're not really as good as you think you are. Well, that's my thoughts for today. Until next time, when worlds collide, signing off for now. Bye-bye.